I wore the pink dress he once said made me look radiant. But that night, I felt invisible. They sat me at the edge of the reception hall, alone at a table labeled just Sylvia. Not mom, not mother of the groom, just Sylvia, as if I were a distant cousin or a last-minute guest. Not the woman who carried him, raised him, sacrificed her life for his. I watched as he twirled his bride under the fairy lights, their laughter echoing like music from a world I was no longer part of. He didn't glance in my direction, not once, not during the speeches. I didn't glance in my direction. I had lost my place in his life. Not really. They say elder women are the roots of the family, the trunk that holds everything together, steady, grounded, unseen. But that night, at that wedding, I wasn't a root. I wasn't a tree. I wasn't anything. I was a forgotten name tag. Sylvia, just Sylvia, not mother of the groom, not Mrs. Hartley, not even mom. The printed label on my table card was crooked, as if whoever made it didn't care, and maybe that was the most honest detail of the night. They say small cuts don't bleed, but they sting. God, do they sting. No one gave a speech for me. There was no tribute video, no slideshow of baby photos where I was holding him in my arms, just a collection of curated moments that erased me altogether. As if he had raised himself, as if I'd only ever been a shadow in his story. No hug, no glance, not even a polite nod from across the room. He walked past me 3 times. Each time, he looked through me, like I was a decorative plant, part of the venue, but not the celebration. And me? I kept smiling, because that's what mothers do. I smiled so hard, my cheeks ached. I fixed the hem of my dress under the table, even though no one was watching. I adjusted my necklace. I rechecked my lipstick. I folded the napkin on my lap until it was a perfect square. I kept praying, silently, desperately, that he would walk over. Just for a second, just to say, "You look nice, Mom," or "Thank you for everything." I would have settled for a simple touch on the shoulder, but he never did. And so I sat there, listening to laughter from tables I wasn't invited to join, watching bridesmaids clink glasses, watching his new wife whisper something into his ear that made him throw his head back and laugh. He had that laugh as a child, too. Big, unfiltered, joyful. He used to laugh like that when I'd tickle him behind the ears. Or when we'd have pancakes for dinner, just because it was Wednesday and he loved maple syrup. Back then, he used to say, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll buy you a castle." Now he had a castle, and I wasn't even allowed past the gate. The waiter brought chicken to my table, dry, overcooked, flavorless. They poured a cheap, sparkling wine in my glass. I didn't drink it, not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid if I took even a sip, the tears would start to spill, and they couldn't. Not here. Not tonight. So I sat still, holding in every ounce of pain like it was my responsibility. And the silence around me, it screamed. It screamed louder than any fight we'd ever had. Louder than the time I told him his fiancée seemed cold and he snapped that I was jealous. Louder than when I said I missed him and he replied with a dry, "I'm just busy." That silence said, "You're not needed anymore. You've been replaced. You're not family. You're extra." The photographer skipped my table when doing family portraits. The MC thanked the groom's father for raising such a wonderful man, not a word about me. It was a death by 1,000 omissions. But the worst part? No one else noticed. They were too busy living their moments, toasting, dancing, filming TikToks, and there I was, a woman who gave birth to the groom, watching her own erasure in real time. I looked down at my dress. Soft pink, delicate, chosen with care. He used to call it my happy dress. Tonight, it felt like armor I had failed to wear. And when the first dance started, I let myself hope one last time. Just one glance, one invitation, one flicker of his old self. He didn't look back. Not once. And that's when the cut. The one I'd been pretending wasn't there finally began to throb, not with blood, but with realization. I had spent my entire life raising him, and now I was just background noise at his beginning. A wedding guest a week after the wedding, he called. His voice was softer than usual, almost apologetic. "Hey, Mom, I was thinking maybe we could have dinner. Just the two of us. I miss you." Those last 3 words cracked something inside me. I wanted to believe them. I told myself, maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he noticed. Maybe my silence at the wedding spoke louder than I thought. So, I said yes. Of course I said yes. He was my son. That afternoon, I baked his favorite cookies. Peanut butter, slightly burnt on the edges, just the way he liked them when he was 10. I even wore the same old cream cardigan I had on the day I brought him home from the hospital. Threadbare now, but it still smelled faintly of lavender and memory. I arrived right on time, hair curled, heart hopeful. I had even brought an old photo album, thinking we'd reminisce. But the moment I stepped into his house, something felt off. There was no smell of dinner, no clatter of dishes, no music, no warmth, just silence, clinical and cold. He guided me into the dining room. I glanced at the table. No plates, no food, just a bottle of wine, unopened, and a neat stack of papers placed squarely at the center. Legal documents, stapled, labeled, tabbed, and next to them, a pen, already uncapped. I blinked, forced a smile. "What's all this?" He sat down slowly, not meeting my eyes. "It's just some paperwork, to make things easier, in case anything happens." "In case?" I asked. "No, actually," he shifted in his chair. "It's immediate, durable, power of attorney, full access, medical and financial. Just sign and it's done." I stared at him. The words swam in the air, distant and foreign. Immediate, durable, control. My hands were still clutching the tin of cookies. "But I'm fine," I said quietly. "I'm not sick." He smiled. That same practice smile he used to get out of trouble in high school. "Just precaution, Mom. Come on, you're getting older. You wouldn't want things to get messy later, would you?" Messy. He meant me. I sat down slowly. My cardigan suddenly felt too tight. "You didn't make dinner?" I asked, as if I still wanted to believe this was about love. "No," he said simply. "Didn't have time." So I nodded, unwrapped the tin of cookies, placed them gently on the table between us. He didn't touch them. Instead, he pushed the papers toward me. And the pen, already uncapped. No take your time. No talk to someone. No, Mom, I just want what's best for you. Just silent expectation. Like I was a transaction he needed to close. I looked down at the signature line, my name printed neatly. My role, principal. His role, agent. Agent. Of what? Of love? Of protection? Or of quiet legal betrayal? I looked at him, really looked, And I didn't see my little boy anymore. I saw a man who had decided I was easier to manage than to include. A man who had built a new life, and now wanted power over what remained of mine. Why now? I asked, voice shaking. Why not wait until, if something ever happens? He didn't hesitate. Because this is easier. You don't have anyone else, Mom. No husband, no siblings. It just makes sense. Ah, that word again. Sense. It always makes sense to the one holding the pen. He leaned forward, his tone softened, fake, like hotel art. I'm not trying to control you, I'm just thinking ahead. But thinking ahead to what? To hospitals? To bank accounts? To a future where I couldn't say no? My hands trembled. He saw it, thought it was fear, but it wasn't. It was clarity. I realized at that moment that dinner was never the point. That call, that I miss you, that dinner invitation, it was all preparation. He hadn't come to reconnect, he came to claim. And the worst part? He didn't even think I'd question it. He assumed I'd smile, say yes, hand over my autonomy like a holiday card. Because I was just Sylvia now, just old, just grateful for crumbs of attention, just easy to manipulate. I looked down at the pen. It gleamed under the overhead light. And suddenly, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel invisible. I felt awake. I took the papers home. Didn't say a word. Didn't argue. Didn't tear them up like in the movies. I just took them. Tucked them neatly into my purse, like I was carrying a receipt for something I never meant to buy. That night, I didn't cry. Not even a single tear. I didn't eat. Didn't even take off my shoes. Just sat on the couch, still in that cardigan he once clung to as a baby. A tray of cookies beside me untouched. Stale now. I stared at my hands. They didn't feel like mine anymore. These hands that used to rock him to sleep, hold his fevered head at 3 a.m., cut crust off his sandwiches, tie his shoelaces, clap for his every school play. These hands once held his whole world. Now they held nothing. Not a thank you, not place, just paper. Legal paper. Binding. Cold. Precise. I flipped through the documents again. Not because I didn't understand them, but because I couldn't believe he did. Durable power of attorney. Immediate effect. Medical decisions. Financial authority. Unrestricted access. He wanted my bank accounts, my savings, my home before I was gone. Not out of emergency. Not out of love. Out of strategy. Because that's what I had become in his eyes. A variable to manage. A line on his financial forecast. A piece of leverage. Not a mother. What hurt the most wasn't the trickery. Wasn't the manipulation. Wasn't even the betrayal. What hurt was the revelation that I had raised a man who could look at the woman who gave him life and see an opportunity. Not family, not history, not sacrifice, just convenience. I thought back to his first bike, the training wheels, the scraped knees, how I ran alongside him cheering like he was winning the Olympics. He used to call me his champion. Now he called me a legal principal. I remembered staying up late during his teenage years waiting for the front door to click open. The nights I prayed he was safe. The mornings I forgave him too easily. All of it. Every small act of love, now rewritten as naivete. I was no longer the mother. I was the asset. No longer a person. A profile. A risk. A tool. And worst of all, he didn't even flinch. Didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't wonder how it might make me feel. Because people don't ask their ATM machines how they're doing. They just swipe and expect access. That night I sat there until the sun rose, frozen, not by fear, but by the weight of what I now knew. My love had been unconditional. His love had a clause. Maybe it always had. Maybe I just didn't see it because mothers don't look for loopholes in love. We just give and hope they won't turn around and take. But he had, without hesitation. He wanted power and thought I'd just sign it over, as if love meant obedience, as if age meant surrender. But I wasn't senile, I wasn't fading, I was watching, remembering, learning. He thought he'd caught me in a moment of weakness. What he didn't realize was that moment had passed. And now, I wasn't broken. I was clear. I folded the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and made a silent vow. He would never hold that kind of pen over me again. I don't know what pulled me to the basement that morning. Maybe it was instinct, maybe desperation, maybe some part of me still clinging to the hope that someone had once truly seen me. It was cold down there, dusty, still smelled faintly of his cologne somehow, even after all these years. Mark's workbench still stood in the corner, tools perfectly aligned. He always believed in systems, in preparation, in protection. And then I saw it, the old metal lockbox, tucked behind the shelf, exactly where he had left it, where he once told me,
"Only open this if you truly need to."
Back then, I laughed at the drama of it, told him he was being overly cautious, but he didn't laugh back. He just nodded, his eyes steady, serious, locking with mine.
"Sylvia, you're strong, but the world isn't always kind to strong women who age."
Now, sitting cross-legged on a concrete floor with that box in front of me, I understood. He had known. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, a sealed letter addressed only to me, bank statements, 2 accounts both in my name, a portfolio summary, a deed to a small lakefront property in Texas, and a final note, written in his unmistakable slanted handwriting.
"For when the world forgets who you are."
I unfolded the document slowly, and the numbers hit me like a second heartbeat. Over $7 million, all in my name, protected, untouchable, hidden even from our son. He had set it up years ago, piece by piece. Transfers through private accounts, investments under shell names, layers upon layers of legal armor, and with it, his letter. I opened it, and the first line stopped my breath. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And someone has tried to reduce you to less than you are. I felt the tears come. Not from sadness, but recognition. Mark had seen what I had refused to, the slow fade, the quiet erosion of respect, the way our son's tone changed as Mark's voice grew silent in the house. I love our boy, but he's not blind. He's ambitious. And ambition without reverence becomes entitlement. That line, cut deeper than any lawyer's document. You gave everything to this family, and if the time comes when they try to take what little you have left, this is your way out. This is yours, not to survive, but to reclaim. I clutched the letter to my chest, not for the money, not even for the freedom, but for the validation. Because for weeks I had asked myself if I was going crazy, if I was overreacting. If maybe I did need someone else to manage things. But Mark had known. He had known I'd doubt myself. So he had left this not as a gift, but as a message. You were never helpless. The basement was quiet, just the hum of the furnace and the paper in my hands. But inside me, something was roaring. Not rage, not revenge. Clarity. Mark had built me a fortress, not to hide but to stand, and I would. I ran my fingers over the account statements again, all mine, all legal. No one could touch them, not without my signature. Our son, he thought he was ahead, thought he had the upper hand, that I was just an old woman clinging to cookies and memory. He didn't know about the basement. He didn't know about the man I married, a man who had seen this moment long before I did. And most of all, he didn't know that I was no longer scared. I wasn't waiting for a seat at his table. I had my own table now, one built with love, foresight, and fireproof steel. That day, I came back upstairs different. I didn't throw the legal papers away. I filed them under evidence, because now the game had changed. And this time, I was the one holding the pen. I didn't scream, didn't throw a fit, didn't confront him like I used to imagine. Instead, I made a phone call. Her name was Carol, retired estate attorney, sharp as ever. No nonsense, no sugarcoating. She didn't give me sympathy. She gave me facts, cold, clear, liberating facts. We met in her sunroom over tea. She read through the documents my son gave me with one arched brow and a calm sip. Then she said, "He's good, but not good enough." I exhaled. For the first time in weeks, we built a trust, not a flimsy will, not vague instructions, a fortress. One with walls made of clauses, locks made of signatures, triggers set to activate on my terms, not anyone else's. Every penny, every asset, the accounts Mark left me, the property in Texas, even my house, all placed inside the trust. All shielded, airtight, irrevocable, ironclad. And I rewrote every power clause. Durable power of attorney? Gone. Medical decisions? Only by 2 outside doctors, not family. Financial control? Me. And only me. It wasn't just legal defense. It was reclamation. Carol leaned back when we finished and said simply, "You're protected now. No one can touch you without tearing down the Constitution." I laughed, and then I cried, because I finally felt what I hadn't in months. Safe. Not in someone else's hands, but in my own. A week later, his message came. "Hey, Mom. Want to come over again? Just hang out. No pressure this time. Promise." No pressure. How generous of him. But this time, I didn't come alone. And I didn't come empty-handed. I brought Carol with me. Not in person, but in the form of a bound folder with embossed edges and color-coded tabs. And I brought power. Not the kind you flash, the kind you wear in silence, in the way you sit straighter, speak calmer, smile smaller. I arrived at his house wearing navy. Minimal makeup. Hair pinned. The same cardigan from the hospital, but this time, I wore it, like armor. He opened the door and smiled, a practiced, careful smile. The kind you give to someone you think still wants to be wanted. "Glad you came," he said. "I brought some papers, too," I said, setting my folder gently on the counter. "You might want to read them before dessert." His brow twitched. I sat, poured my own tea. He picked up the binder. flipped to the first page, read, paused, flipped again, read slower. I watched his pupils contract, his throat tighten, his jaw clench. He looked up. "What is this?" I smiled. "It's called independence." You made a trust?" I didn't answer. He already knew. "You're locking me out of everything." This time, I nodded. "Yes, completely." He blinked. "I just wanted to help you." "No," I said. Calm, clear. "You wanted access, not to help, to control." "You don't need to do this, Mom. I already did." He stared at me, for the first time, like a stranger. And maybe that's what we were now. He opened his mouth, but I cut in first. "I'm not angry," I said, "and I'm not here to punish you, but I won't apologize for protecting myself, not anymore." He went quiet. The silence between us this time wasn't full of guilt. It was full of power. Mine. "I brought some cookies," I added, reaching into my bag. "They're burnt on the edges, like always." He didn't reach for them. He just stood there, holding a binder he never thought I'd be smart enough or bold enough to create. And me? I sat back in his designer kitchen, sipping tea like a guest I no longer needed to impress, because now I knew. He could invite me. He could pour wine. He could hand me pens, but I would never again hand him control. He invited me again. Third time's the charm, right? This time he said it was just a talk, no pressure, no expectations. Just a casual visit. I knew better now, but I still went. Because I wanted him to see me, not the mother he thought he could outmaneuver, not the woman he assumed was soft, pliable, easy, but me, the woman who came prepared. He greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, offered tea, gestured to the kitchen table where a new set of documents already waited. Manila folder, clean edges, a fresh pen placed delicately on top. Everything neat, controlled. He slid it across the table. "It's just provisional," he said. "Not like before, just something to review, in case anything changes later." I said nothing. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out my own folder, embossed, indexed, signed. I slid it across the table, slowly, deliberately. "This is not provisional," I said. "It's final." He looked confused at first, then curious. Then his eyes locked onto the word in bold at the top of the page. Irrevocable trust agreement. Beneficiary, Sylvia Hartley. Grantor, Sylvia Hartley. Power of attorney, none granted. He blinked. Once, then again. His jaw flexed. His hand twitched near the pen, then pulled back. I watched him scan the details, the property transfer, the account restructuring, the medical directives, the locked clauses. His breathing changed. Not angry, not yet. Just surprised. He hadn't seen this version of me before. The me that didn't explain, didn't justify, didn't flinch. No more soft talk, no more fake dinners, no more pretending I didn't know what he was doing. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, I stood, and from the hallway she entered. Carol. Not in a power suit, just a crisp blouse, neat trousers, leather portfolio in hand, polite, calm, deadly precise. "Good afternoon," she said gently. extending a hand. "I'm Carol Templeton, Mrs. Hartley's legal counsel." He froze. She didn't raise her voice, didn't threaten. She didn't need to. She simply stated facts. That the trust was active, that any future attempts to override or access protected assets would be flagged and contested, that all records of prior offers had been documented. She smiled warmly. "We're not here for a fight." And we weren't. There was no fight to have. It was already done. He sat in silence, the folders still open in front of him. A stack of intentions, now meaningless. Carol and I stood. She shook his hand again. I didn't. We walked out without a scene. No shouting, no melodrama. Just the soft sound of a front door clicking shut behind us. But the message? It rang louder than any courtroom gavel. I was no longer available. Not for guilt, not for manipulation, not for quiet betrayals in the name of love. He had underestimated the woman who raised him. And now, he had to live with the version of me he helped create. One who no longer waited for permission. One who no longer mistook silence for peace. One who, finally, knew her worth. And this time, I held the pen.
He came back. Weeks later, no text in advance, no voicemail, just a knock on my door on a quiet Tuesday morning. When I opened it, he stood there, not with folders or rehearsed smiles, but with something I hadn't seen in a long time: hesitation. In his hand, he held an envelope, plain, cream-colored, unmarked. He looked older somehow, tired, like someone who had finally looked into a mirror and didn't quite like what he saw. I just wanted to say I'm sorry," he said. I nodded. Didn't smile. Didn't move to hug him. Just let the words land in the space between us. "I see it now," he added, quieter. "All of it. What I became. What I tried to do. I didn't mean to be cruel. I thought I was being smart." Smart. Funny how ambition and carelessness wear the same mask when you're in a hurry to get ahead. I didn't say much, because I'd said everything I needed to. In trusts, in signatures, in silence. But I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw something behind his eyes that didn't ask for power or control. It asked for mercy. "I know I don't deserve anything," he said. "Not trust, not a second chance. I just needed you to know." He extended the envelope. "It's not legal. It's not a trick. Just a letter. That's all." I didn't reach for it right away. I just looked at it, then at him. And finally, I took it. Not because I needed to, but because he did. "Thank you," I said, "for coming." He looked like he wanted to say more. But there was nothing left to salvage. He knew it, and I knew it. Because forgiveness, that's personal. But access, that's earned. I told him I forgave him. Truly, not with bitterness, not with sarcasm. I forgave him because I had already let go of the anger, the disappointment, the version of motherhood that demanded constant sacrifice. But forgiveness didn't come with a key, not to my accounts, not to my trust, not to my time or my heart or my peace. That door had closed. He nodded just once, then turned and walked away. No begging, no dramatics, just quiet footsteps on concrete. And when I closed the door, I didn't cry. I didn't run to open the envelope, didn't hold it to my chest like a symbol of redemption. I set it on the mantel and left it there, because some peace doesn't need proof. Some healing isn't found in apologies, but in boundaries, in the quiet knowing that you finally chose yourself. I spent the rest of that morning in the garden, pulling weeds, watering the roses Mark had planted. The sun was warm, the wind was soft, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like my life was mine again. Not a transaction, not a legacy someone else could lay claim to. Just mine. Later that day, I baked cookies, burnt the edges on purpose. Old habits, but this time, I ate them myself. Sitting in the kitchen, shoes off, peaceful, not waiting for anyone to knock, not hoping for reconciliation, not aching to be seen, because I had seen myself, fully, finally, and that was enough. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the conversation, didn't reread old voicemails, didn't stare at the envelope still untouched on the mantel. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter, but not to him, not to Mark, not even to the future. I wrote it to her, the woman I used to be, the one who said yes too quickly, who apologized for taking up space, who carried the weight of everyone else's comfort and called it love. I wrote, "You can stop now. You carried too much for too long. You did your best, and that was more than enough." I told her I was proud of her for trying, for loving without keeping score, for surviving even when no one noticed how hard it was. I told her she didn't need to be needed anymore. She could rest. Then I baked a small cake, just for me, vanilla with lemon glaze, no fancy frosting, no decorations, just one candle, white, simple, quiet. I lit it, turned off the lights, and sat in silence. And when the time came to make a wish, I didn't wish for reconciliation. I didn't wish for him to change. I didn't even wish for time to turn back. I wished for stillness, the kind of peace that doesn't come from being forgiven, but from forgiving yourself, the kind that doesn't depend on being loved, but on loving who you've become. I wished for ownership of my choices, of my voice, of my boundaries, and most of all, I wished for a life that no longer apologized for protecting itself. Then I blew out the candle, not as a farewell, but as a quiet beginning. And in the darkness, for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. I felt whole. Because silence, when chosen, is not emptiness. It is freedom. And that was the loudest truth of all.